Boo. It's scary out here in the dark, isn't it? And this story is best told with the lights off. So I'm going to talk to you about the story The Green Lady, which I'm basing my next novel on. So, it was a night not unlike this. Many, many years ago, in the early 90s, 1990 or 1991, I believe, we were camping at a place called Wood Bastwick. I was camping with the Scouts. I wasn't in the Scouts. I was there because my dad was the Scout leader. And it was the end of the camp. We were sat around the fire. It was the last night. Dying embers of the fire, and they wanted a ghost story before they went to bed. So this was the one my dad told me, the one that had been handed down generations from when he was a child. Now, there were, along the river, around that area, very, very far out into the countryside, in fact, pretty much in the middle of nowhere, and still is in the middle of nowhere, there were several mills along the river which went around the Broad, Wood Bastwick Broad, known also as Decoy Broad. And it was the Broad is in the grounds of what was Wood Bastwick Hall, which was a huge Victorian mansion. And the miller who owned the mills along the river was a very rich man, and he decided to show off his riches by giving his wife the best that he could give her. And one of the things that she wanted, that she fell in love with, was a very special green dress that he had gifted her, and she wore it everywhere. She wore it for just anywhere. She was showing off this fantastic green dress. And one day, the mill owner had gone out, and he came home, couldn't find his wife. So he came up went up the stairs to the mill, into the small room where he would, into the small room which they shared in that mill. And he found her laying on the floor with a knife in her back. Someone had killed her in a way that she would never have seen her killer. So, it's possible that the miller himself actually found her cheating on him, and after everything he'd done for her, and stabbed her in the back himself. Who knows? Could have been anyone. Could have been a jealous lover. I don't know why I've decided to do this tonight. This is actually quite creepy out here. But we'll continue on. Yeah. So the legend of it was that the lady in green, she goes around the site and the area around the house and the rivers and the Broad, and she goes around looking for a killer, and she says, "Who has killed me? Who has killed me?" And that's about it. That's the legend of the story. But in about 1969, if anyone's still listening to my creepiness, in about 1969, way before I was born, the mansion, which was Wood Bastwick Hall, was derelict. It was falling apart. and the landowners had moved into a new home further down the road. And while they were waiting for the mansion to be demolished, it stood empty. And it stood empty. Just saw something over there. It stood empty, like I've just said, for the third time, I think. And some scouts were out on a hike, and they decided what a fun idea it would be to go and break into this big empty mansion and see what it was like inside. And I would have loved to have seen what it was like inside, but I wasn't born for another 14 years after it went down, after it was taken down. But yeah. So they crept into the mansion, they slowly opened the doors, and just to make sure that there was no one in there, and they crept in to the main hall, and they crept, and they looked around, and they looked around some more, and they saw nothing, because there was nothing there. But then, just as they were about to try to go up to the top of the stairs, one of them screamed, because it stood on something. But yeah, one of them screamed, and they all looked up. All of them ran back to the camp, and they said nothing. They said nothing to the leaders. They got back in their tent and they went to sleep, and they said nothing to their leaders. Only a few years later, one of them confessed, because they would have been in huge trouble, of course, for breaking into the mansion. They weren't, that wouldn't have gone down very well. The leaders didn't know. It was a few years later, when one of them came back to the scout group and brought his own son to the scouts, that he confessed that they'd done this, and that what they'd seen at the top of the stairs was a green figure looking down upon them. That's it. Not a very scary story, really, but yeah. But she was there, and supposedly, and having done a bit of research, that's what green ladies do. They protect big houses. A lot of these big Victorian houses have had green lady ghosts protecting them, even if they're kind of spirits, I suppose. They're not they maybe even weren't ever alive. But the story from the mill, since I've later found out, probably a mixture of the ghost of the green lady and a different story, because the miller's daughter was actually hit over the head by one of the sails, and that's fact. That's known, and she died, and she's supposed to be haunting that place. So yeah, it's a real mill. You can still go there. I do occasionally. I haven't been in it, but certainly gone past it. And if anyone's actually watching this YouTube video still, or this TikTok video still, I think you deserve a medal, because it's been shit. But thank you for coming this far. And The Lady in Green, my book, The Lady in Green, will be a much, much more detailed story than this. It's going to have proper ghosts and lesbians and stuff like that in it, and smugglers and all sorts of crap. And we're going to get to the 10-minute mark, and no one is going to watch a single part of this video. Clyde is going to be snoring so much of this